How you doing, comic art fans? This is JK at Comic Art Channel. Today we want to take a look at the art of recent Hall of Fame, Eisner Hall of Fame inductee and legendary artist, comic artist, Alex Nino. So I have a couple examples here of some of his early work and one of his art books that really do a good job of just showcasing, his multitude of art styles, his evolution. I think as a comics fan, as a fan of art, if you don't know Alex Nino, hopefully this video helps you get interested in finding some of his art, some of his stories, because in my eyes, he is a truly visionary artist, probably a man out of time in the sense of being ahead of his time in the early 70s. He was born in the Philippines in 1940 and part of the Filipino invasion into DC Comics in the early 70s. And right away, anyone that looks at some of his DC horror stories, which we'll look at one today, will see that it was totally unique, totally singular, extremely interesting, and different from almost anything else that you could look at one of the big two comics publishers. So, we have two books here. We'll go through a House of Mystery story and his art book. Here we go. So, I think Alex made his debut on House of Mystery issue 204. That's not in here. That was 1972. And, he was pretty steady with having stories across all of the DC horror anthology type titles. One example I want to go through today is this story, See No Evil, which really demonstrates just instantly the different look he had, his mark making, how he makes everything look interesting, and we can compare. The other stories in this issue and see right away, hey, yeah, this was the most interesting, visually most interesting thing in here. Even compared to some of the legends that actually had stories in this book. Jack Kirby, Frank Thorne, I think maybe. And so just quick rundown. There's this guy, he's in jail, he's on death row for murdering a police officer while running from them after stealing money from his father. And he blames his father, kind of an ungrateful son, didn't treat his father well. And now he's trying to get out of dying. And desperate, blames his father, wants to kill his father, and ends up making a deal with the devil. And so, the first title page, you see this guy, guard, he's actually the devil. And when you take a look, Nino, talking about supreme mark making, some of these marks, they just look random. But he is a master, really, of kind of form, of creating form. If you've ever seen a video of him draw, it's insane, kind of how he gets to his final forms. And I mean, this is just a beautiful, amazing example to show, hey, this character is an important character. Why does he look this way? Why, you know, we want to emphasize him because he's Satan. He's the one that this prisoner is gonna make a deal with. And so we, get through. He ends up kind of making the deal. You see closer up, menacing look, evil look of the devil. And he grants this guy his wish. And, he's about to be hung. Beautiful panel layout here, showing kind of the sequence of the hanging, him surviving, just the glee of him now thinking, hey, I'm alive, now I'm invisible. And so right away, just looking, you don't really even need any dialogue, any narration here. He's running away, he's invisible. Just very creative way of demonstrating this in these two panels. And now we're kind of flashback to how all of this went down. So here you see the scene, very Nino-like action scene with him, shooting one of the officers and then being taken in. And he's on the kind of way to his dad's place to get some revenge. So he's going to kill the guy that did this to him, which wasn't him, of course, it was his dad. And, this panel, just take a look. Like everything you've seen up until now, so creative, so unique, and then you just get this style, spotting of blacks, negative space. Really, what can't Nino do? And so gets to his dad's house and they're having a wake, and he thinks his dad has died, but hey, it's actually him, and the devil has screwed him. And that's the ending. It's not a happy ending for a bad guy. And so we just wanted to show an example, short 6-page story, but you look at the art and there's just nothing like it. Let's go to the story after. We have what is this? I think this is Frank Thorne. This might be Frank Thorne. This could be, is it Frank Robbins? Not sure, let me check. Murphy Anderson. So the great Murphy Anderson, story right after. And no one's knocking this art. This is beautiful art. Very classic. But you compare Murphy Anderson's story to Nino's, and you can't really say one's better. It's all subjective. But for me, this is clearly way more interesting, and this is clearly different from anything else that you see. Here you go. This, I think, is the oh, this is Don Heck, I think. And so, it's a comic. It's executed well, but when you're talking about just things that stand out, things that show some experimentation, a lot of creativity, um, to my eye, this is way more interesting, and Alex Nino has been way more interesting throughout his career, and he should be recognized for that. Everyone should know his name for that. So yeah, that's an example of some of his House of Mystery work. He spent a lot of time on those DC horror titles, and early kind of in the 70s, as he got to the mid 70s, he began doing a little bit more work with Marvel on some of their magazine titles. Things like Rampaging Hulk, I think some of their science fiction magazines. And then, mid late 70s, early 80s, you saw him also move to Warren Publishing, doing stories for, you know, eerie, creepy, 1984, 1994. And that's really where, um, he began to, I think, truly experiment and let loose. And so I think there might be some examples in here, but this book, is really just uh, a, a, a collection of some of his works that showcase all of his various styles and methods and kind of instruments. And so luckily I got a numbered um, signed edition. I think this book is still available on his Etsy shop, which I'll link to. But yeah, let's just go through this book, and so you'll see kind of all of his uh, art instruments and various styles that result. So over time, he's been at this in the U.S. for 50 years now, and over time, he's definitely moved towards a lot more fantasy, sci-fi, and kind of fantasy illustration. I know he does a lot of painting these days, but this is like so interesting, and his use of color, his marks, they're nothing. It's nothing like anybody else, and I'm pretty sure no one could really even replicate this. But when you see the accolades that someone like a Mobius, Philippe Drouillet, um, these guys have for being visionary, Alex Nino is right up there with them. And, um, hopefully more people develop a true appreciation of his abilities, his vision. Even with color, we're talking, just a beautiful mastery of light, experimentation with color, forms. Sadly, I think in mostly through the 90s, he spent time at animation studios at Disney working on at least a couple movies like Mulan, Treasure Island. I think he did a lot of background and character design for, a bunch of different animated television shows. Um, and, I'm sure, that's something that he kind of wanted to do and had to do. But as a comics fan, I really feel like, we missed out on, some prime years of, visionary comics. I mean, he did do, comics here and there during that time. Um, I know one of the final issues of Savage Sword of Conan, he had a story, and we'll look at some art from there, original art from there, uh, in this episode. But being in the Philippines, not getting to really the U.S. full time until I think the mid '80s. Um, you always wonder kind of what could have been, um, if he had had the opportunity, or if the landscape of comics was a little bit different from back then. Today, no doubt, so much experimentation. It's a golden age of kind of creator owned books. Uh, the sky would be the limit. But back then, a lot more adherence to the house style, uh, financially much bigger risk to try to go on your own. I'm not sure, whether or not the Europeans saw him or saw his work, but it's shocking that, uh, he couldn't team up with anyone out there, a writer out there, or, find his way into Metal Erlan, which was right around the time when he was breaking into the international market. So mid to late 70s. Here's some of his pen and ink work. Um, I know these days he's moved to using mostly a parallel pen for his pen and ink stuff. And so you end up, having less of this kind of um, texturing and hatching and more kind of sharp um, forms. I think these are good examples of that. But I've never seen him do any kind of pencil layout. He just starts drawing what appear to be random marks, and you end up with a beautiful form and a beautiful illustration. And the versatility, um, hatching, stippling, extremely creative. Here's some of his ink wash type of style. I think all of this is pretty modern. But in his run on at Warren Publishing, he used a lot of the ink wash, and it really, it was beautiful, beautiful works of art. Amazing use of negative space. There's very few holding lines here. He's creating shapes with, spots of black. Go. I think the pencil is really where you get to see a lot of his kind of shading, a little bit more organic forms. I mean, he's a master. He's a master of all of his art instruments in any medium. He's churning out unique, visionary works. A lot of people talk about artists, and this guy's the ultimate artist. But as a fan, as a comics fan, it's definitely not mainstream, but you got to know who he is. The wonderful fantasy illustrations here. This colored pencil. Finally, what he's doing a lot of these days is painting, I think with acrylics. A lot of light studies I see on his Instagram. I mean, these are amazing backgrounds, amazing settings. I'm really thankful to have been exposed to his art, and as a fan, wish there was much more of it, and wish that DC, Marvel, editors in the 70s, 80s would have recognized a little bit better what exactly they had. Some of his digital work, which looks like it's combined with his work by hand. And in his 80s, still experimenting, still trying new things. So this is a great book just to, look at the variety of techniques, styles he has. And now we can move on to, some close-ups of the original art. And so what that gets us is just a much clearer look, at some of his strokes, his mark making, which you really can't see on paper when it's printed out. Sometimes even his old DC horror stuff, it's just all blacked out and you don't see the various gradations. Yeah. Okay, so now we've got some original art pages. Some of my most prized possessions here, just because they were so difficult to acquire. When I first started collecting, I was on the hunt, and not a lot of this stuff was available. The people that have pages um, don't want to sell them, and you gotta kind of get lucky, and so I happened to get lucky and ended up with a bunch. um, but yeah, straight off the bat, I mean, look at these marks, these forms. In one of my other videos, I talk about Paul Pope, and how he's kind of fearless with his brush and his brush strokes. And I feel the same way about Nino. It's his ability to just use these unique marks to create expressions, bodies, scenes. It's really unparalleled, and nothing like you know comics that you see. So even just this first panel, we're talking about this expression here, and uh, this is a page where he's liberally spotting blacks and creating some shadow. It's just wonderful to look at. And knowing that these are almost 50 years old, and being able to have a piece of this type of history, that's the allure for me for original art. And we're starting with this awesome image here, this witch, and great angle, great pose. Got the hand and arm reaching out. Um, it's just fantastic. I mean, his cross hatching here to create some highlights in the raggedy dress. All of his poses of his characters. Nothing's boring, that's for sure. Imagine, what he would have done if Neil Gaiman had him on an arc of Sandman. There's so many blown opportunities, I think, just far, far too underappreciated. More of a sci-fi setting, I think. Great expressions, great action, always unique characters. He's not recycling, every character with the same version of a face. Here's a page from Adventure Comics, is Captain Fear, one of his Captain Fear stories. This was pretty early when he came over. And so, a little bit more restrained, more traditional look, but still, different from anything out there. I mean, I don't know how to describe it. Um, just a very unique style. He's great with the reflection in the eyes. Just total different style switch up here. Thicker pen. This is a creepy war story page. Laid out by Carmine Infantino and inked by Nino. So, more traditional. Everything looks more traditional, but with Nino embellishments. And it just makes it look better. It makes it look more interesting. And here in Creepy, you see more of that wash come into play. This is a page from DPS from his one of his 2 Savage Sword of Conan stories. One was really early in issue 6. And then one was really late in the run with issue, what is this, 226? But, we have some acetate for dialogue. Hopefully there's not much glare. But, yeah, I mean, what Conan looks like this? This is mid 90s, I think. So he's firmly into his like very sharp, angular look. And I believe this whole story is double page spreads. It's like a 30-some page story, all double page spreads. And it's phenomenal. And they waited until the end of, I think it might be the last issue of Savage Sword to, be willing to do this type of thing Marvel did. It's just incredible. Incredible lack of recognition of what they had, the type of visionary, that they had. And, they took more risks in the 80s, when you look at Sienkiewicz, things like that. But they already had that in the 70s. And both publishers, DC and Marvel, really, really blew it. And it's sad for, the comics readers. But, a lot of this stuff is still preserved. And, one of the big reasons I created a YouTube channel was just so that I can share some of Nino's art, and hopefully, fingers crossed, get him to take some time for an interview with me. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Hope you go out and find some Nino works. Look forward to more. This isn't going to be the only Alex Nino video, I can promise you. And let me know. Leave a comment. Let me know if I'm missing anything. Or you have anything you want to know more about. Thanks for watching.